Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming to our Career Development Day. Right now, we have a great panel, which we're calling Making the Most of Internships. And our panel includes magazine and newspaper editors, and they'll be discussing the value of internship programs, both from the perspective of publications, as well as from the perspective of current students and recent graduates. So our hope is that this will be a valuable opportunity for students, recent graduates, and hiring managers to get advice from industry leaders and recent interns on how to make internships better for everyone. Just before I introduce our panelists, I would like to note that we have some people tuning into this event over Zoom, and this event is being recorded and will later be posted on our website. So without further ado, here's our panel. Stephanie Bai, so it's supposed to change. Okay, so this is in a different order. Okay, Colin Leslie from the Medical Post. Samia Madwar from the Walrus. Angela Potenza from the Globe and Mail. And Stephanie Bai from Maclean's. So, the first question that I have for all of you is, what does a magazine or newspaper get out of hiring interns? Go ahead.
All three of you just kind of like turned to look at me. It's all right. I thought about this a lot, and it's, I can speak to this both as a former magazine intern. I mean, that's how I got my start in magazines, and also now as someone who oversees a fellowship program at the Walrus, which is where I currently work. It's two things. So now, I until recently was in a position where I was doing the hiring or running the fellowship program at the Walrus. And just a quick note that I call it a fellowship because that's what it is at the Walrus. It's not technically an internship. It's a fellowship. It's a paid position. But, in terms of the magazine world or the media world, it is equivalent to an internship. And we have a very specific role, so most of our fellows are fact-checking fellows. They do the fact-checking at the magazine. So for us, for the Walrus, the benefit is very clear of having a crop of, every year we have a fresh group of fact-checkers that we train in magazine fact-checking. But it's also for us not just having fact-checkers who are on staff for a period of time, but also fresh perspectives in the newsroom. Because as we're, in a magazine like The Walrus, when we're not doing daily news, but thinking, well, how do we tackle something like Fiona, like the recent storms on the East Coast? How do we think about that in the long term? How do we do a story that's going to be relevant in 6 months from now, not the immediate news story? And so it's really helpful to have fresh voices in the room, not just, the editors who have been there for a long time, but people who maybe have family out there, or people who just kind of have a fresh perspective. So for a magazine, for myself at least, it's really, really helpful to have those new voices in the room. As a former intern, I can say that I got my start as an intern, as a fact-checking intern at a magazine. It was over 10 years ago when labor laws were a little bit different in Ontario, and it was an unpaid internship. And so I recognized that I had the privilege to be able to do an unpaid internship for a length of time. Not everyone can do that, of course, especially now. And I also recognize, and I don't want to sugarcoat it, but at the time it was the start of the previous recession, and there were a lot of layoffs. So I was doing fact-checking, and it was a role that previously had been a paid staff position, and suddenly there are interns who are doing it. So I don't want to sugarcoat it. It is also cheap, or at the time, in that case, free labor. So that's another aspect of it that I just figured I should be open about.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a two-way street. I mean, we learn so much by having interns. They're going to be interested in things that we're not. So whenever I'm interviewing someone, I really say that, and they want to know about that. I think the biggest value for them is they participate in our daily 10:10 news meetings. So that's just people talking through the processes of stories. But it's sometimes even little technical things. I think an intern was doing, posting stories on our website, and they, oh, that's a clever way to do it. You do it all at once like that. And I learned little things like that. So it's 100% a two-way street. So it's that.
I also wanted to add, I worked at Broadview as a magazine intern, and I feel like what I could also kind of bring from my experience was also how to navigate social media. I feel like especially at magazines, there can be quite a small team, and so if you are bringing in like kind of that younger, fresh perspective, as you were saying, just knowing what works well on Instagram stories versus like what should live on the grid, which feels like something that, you know, I grew up doing all the time, it can actually add a lot of journalistic value to the lifespan of stories. And I think also on the topic of fresh perspectives, equity and diversity are two like great additions, especially when you have a new cohort of interns. The Globe Summer Program, it's not really an internship, it is like a summer contract job, but the cohort that I was with, it was just really great to see all these like faces, especially in like a really great newsroom like the Globe that is legacy media. So I feel like internships can be an inroads at least to making, you know, a step into these newsrooms.
Oh, there are only 3 microphones for you guys. I didn't realize that.
You can share.
Okay. So to follow up on that, what can a publications team do to make an intern's experience valuable and engaging?
I think I can speak on behalf of the Globe and Mail. I'm sure other places do it similar too. We do a couple of things. So we start all our summer staff off in a 1-week intense orientation and workshops. And so they get to have Q&As with some of our foreign correspondents. They get to talk to our public editor. They get presentations from basically every section of our outlet. And then we pair every summer staffer with a mentor who they can buddy up with during the summer. And we put them with our seasoned veteran reporters, right? So like a Robin Doolittle gets a mentee, and some of those relationships are long lasting and they last far beyond the summer program, which has been very useful. And we do other things like, we have, outings and social gatherings as well. And some of those are, official Globe ones, and some of them are just the cohort picks up and they do it themselves, which is great to see. So those are some of the ways that we do it.
I also got jobs by being an intern. I interned at the Toronto Star, and you just reported. But at the company I work for, the magazine I used to work for now used to be owned by Rogers, and they had the M School internship program, and they would rotate people through different programs. And we do that when we have interns at our current company. You go talk to the circulation person and the subscription person. They sort of run those through people like that. I'm not sure how interesting young journalists find that, but it's definitely that sort of day-to-day journalism. And we certainly spend more time. I do sort of thinking through, well, why do we do things, and talking about that a lot more when there's an intern there. So I think that's a value on that side.
I'll just add to that it can also be reciprocal. So I think in looking at the interns who are there at the time, just looking at what their interests and strengths are, it's also really good to just kind of see like what do they want to bring to the table, or what are they particularly interested in, and then trying to kind of match their skills and interest with what you have to offer. And the other thing is also just maintaining a relationship with them so that it lasts longer than just the period that they're interning at your publication. And so staying in touch with interns and keeping them in mind. And I try to do this, but when I know that we've had a fellow who is now freelancing, and I'll see various opportunities, or people will come and ask me for recommendations if they need someone to do a freelance gig, or if they're even looking to hire. I might think, I know someone who's actually looking for work right now. Let me send this to them. So it's also just building those long-term relationships, I think, is really important.
I guess to add, I would say that just having a way to access the company, like the mentorship thing, was really helpful, because I feel like I could have somebody to go to if I had questions who wasn't my boss. And I feel like a lot of the times, just, because I was in the internship experience so recently, like, you feel so green and you feel so new and lost sometimes going to this big company and not really knowing who you should talk to and how you should navigate these relationships or these connections. So having some sort of infrastructure is really helpful. Also, I found that being an intern, it was really great to have like understandable and well-communicated expectations for my work and what I should be doing. Because if you are kind of in a role where you're like, I'm the intern, I'm kind of here to do anything you want me to do, sometimes you don't really understand how to measure your own success and growth that way.
Great, thank you. So I'm interested in hearing what you have to say about what are some of the pros and cons, I guess, of a shorter internship versus a longer internship. You know, I know the Walrus, their editorial fellowships, it's, what is it, a year? A year, yeah. And, you know, some of them only last for, some internships only last for 6 to 12 weeks, and there's a big difference there. So what are your thoughts on that?
Since you asked about the Walrus, like I'll say that first is, I mean, I can speak to my experience at least. I've done the shorter internships that were just a few weeks, and for me it was just good to kind of get a sense of what is out there. It's kind of like internship shopping or job shopping, where I did an internship back when I was a student doing communications for a nonprofit, and it helped me see that this is really interesting work. It's not for me. I don't want to do this. Nothing wrong with the internship in itself. It was just, it gave me a sense of what is it like to work in this field, and to see, to get a sense of what I do want and what I don't want. And at the same time, a longer internship allows you to really, really delve into the work. Hopefully you find it interesting. Hopefully you like it for that full year that you're there, you're doing the fellowship. And it also allows you to build longer term relationships, I think, more lasting relationships with the editors, the journalists that you're working with. And for me, that helped me, again, my first internship that I did was for a longer time. And, it helped me develop those longer term relationships. I'm still in touch with some of the editors that I worked with, and this was over 10 years ago. And at the time, early on in my career, they also kept me in mind for various opportunities, and would, even after I left that internship, would send them to me. So I think that was the value for me for a longer term opportunity.
Yeah, I'd say, I look at it as the shorter ones are sort of how to get, it's like a little taste test of what it is. I think our industry needs all three, and if any newsrooms are listening, please offer more of them if possible. We do academic internships during the school year, and then we've got the long one in the summer. We don't have a full year one now, although we've got some other year-long things. But the beauty of it is, in an industry that is shrinking, it's harder to get some job experience. And so it's hard to know if you're going to be great at something, or what you might want to sample, what other jobs are in a newsroom, because it's more than just reporting. And so all of these opportunities offer all of those things, and the type of experience you need to get each of those is different too. So if you're just starting out, I would definitely look for some short ones, because the people hiring are not looking for long experience, and then you can just kind of be in a newsroom, absorb, catch on to kind of the vibe of the place. And then, it's a stepping stone to the summer programs. And then the summer programs are a stepping stone to the year-long ones. And I've seen so many young people move through our newsroom at the academic, then they go maybe to the Toronto Star or somewhere else to get the summer one, and then they'll come back to us. And it's great to see, because I think as a young person starting out, being exposed to different newsrooms allows you to become a better journalist, because you get different advice, you widen your network, and you just work in different places that have different cultures, and I think that is really, really important.
Yeah, I guess my memory is all from the 90s when I interned, and everything was pretty well summer internships. I did one at the Ottawa Citizen, and then that helped me get a job in the radio room at the Toronto Star one night a week, and then a summer internship after that. So I think there's a natural length that works quite well, especially when there's a break in the education system in the summertime. Though our last intern actually ran from, I don't know, February to May or so. So I think that was just the company said, hire interns now, and we said, okay.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add. I think this covered a lot of great ground, but absolutely, I think especially when you're looking at shorter term internships, if you're a student, that is super helpful, just to be able to have that, natural break from the school year, or to even work during a semester when next semester might look completely different in terms of the classes you have. But I will say, I love a long internship. I love the idea of being like fully embedded in the company, because it really can give you a sense of, what you're doing there and what you want to do moving forward.
Great, thank you. So how can a publication ensure that interns and other entry-level employees are getting the support that they need in order to advance in their careers?
Definitely, as I alluded to before, a mentor in the newsroom, and being assigned to somebody on your first day, so that you've got a buddy to go and ask those questions that you don't want to ask your boss. And it also, that mentor often will just give you the confidence to keep going. I think as a if you're the boss or someone who works with the new person, it's about exposing them to different opportunities that can play to their strengths. And when you figure out what their strengths are, then find some stretch goals for them too, right? Because you want to keep that person moving and growing because it benefits you as an employer as much as it benefits the young person.
I think also setting clear expectations for the intern is really helpful because I think I experienced this definitely starting an internship and feeling very green. I think someone was saying that earlier, like feeling really green, feeling very new in an internship position. It can be very intimidating, and especially I imagine at the Globe and Mail, for instance, you really want to start your day and just write a front page story. Like that's maybe the vision that you have in mind is that that's what success look like. And I think it's just really good for people who are hiring interns to just kind of give them a sense of what they're expecting of them. So you don't have this undue pressure on yourself as an intern to just kind of, I don't know, like meet these wild goals that maybe aren't really expected of you. I hope that makes sense.
I love social events. I think it was great. One time at the Globe, we went bowling and there was alcohol involved, and that was really nice just to see some of like the managers, relaxing, having a beer. Like it was just a very nice environment. Like honestly, the Globe as a newsroom, it is very laid back. Everybody's very open and welcoming. But just to be able to go into that social event, it does kind of make you feel like, oh, I get to know this company a little bit better. Like sometimes people actually even talk about story ideas while they're, waiting for their turn at the bowling lane or something like that. So I think social events as well. I mean, I can't underscore enough how important networking is and just feeling like at least 3 people you can talk to after your internship ends. So I love a good social event.
All good. I agree.
Okay.
I took notes.
I think we can skip that question. You've already sort of addressed that. So what are hiring managers looking for in an applicant, when hiring interns? So what steps also in the hiring process can a publication take to support equity, diversity, and inclusion?
Sure. I don't know. Our last round of interns was specifically an EDI hire, and so HR. All the candidates they gave us were people at BIPOC. So obviously, when HR has a buy-in or there's a program that's specifically around that, that's great. It's really hard to get people right now. Like we're genuinely looking for people who will work with us regularly in terms of with B2B media. It's a little different than consumer because it's hard to pitch. You have to sort of, no one's like my magazine is for Canadian doctors. No one comes in and understands those issues. So often I'm just looking for a reporter who wants to learn and is willing to write about those things. And we'll say, okay, the first story should be something about this. And then you're going to start learning along that. So it's a challenge to get people right now. But, I think we're all looking for people.
Okay, so our summer application process just opened. Applications are due at the end of October for next summer. So yes, it's that early, but it's a long process. And we also want people to have their summer plans in place, especially if they have to move or something like that. So, and we're hiring for 11 positions. So please find me afterwards, DM me, however you want to reach out, or you can reach out to Sandra Martin, who runs our summer program now. But I think what we'd be looking for is clips are super important. We want to see the type of writer that you are. Story ideas. I can't underscore this one enough. When you come in for an interview, if you're selected for an interview at the Globe, we're going to ask you for a story idea. And then we're going to say, and what's another one? So don't come with just one. And the number of applicants that stumble on that is sometimes alarming. And so please, story ideas, story ideas, story ideas. Even if you're not applying for a writing position, if you're applying for like a live news position or a visuals position or a podcast position, ideas are part of our craft, right? They're what we do. They're what set us apart from other media and other outlets. So we want to see what kinds of ideas you have. And another tip I would say is please look at the publication you're going in for an interview to, particularly for a week. It is very obvious when people come in and we say, like, talk about the Globe and they name something from 5 years ago, we can catch on to that very, very quickly. So those are the kinds of, like, we're looking for sharp people who really know what they want and are hungry for an opportunity. To give you an idea and not to intimidate you, because we interview lots and lots of people, so we really want to encourage everyone to apply. But, some years we get 500 applications for 11 positions. So, yeah. But part of our hiring process, I should say too, is we've got a committee at the Globe. Everyone when you're brought in for an interview, it's with a panel of 2 people from different parts of the newsroom, and we always make it a manager and a staffer, so we can get different perspectives on the hire and look for different types of talent too. And then if you're selected for a second interview, it's another 2 people. So even in the interview process, you get exposed to people at the Globe. And sometimes we don't hire people during that interview process because there's so few positions, but we keep those people in mind for other things. And a lot of those people have, befriended me on LinkedIn or wherever, and we keep that relationship going. And then they say, oh, I just got this short internship. Do you think I could apply again for next summer? So, don't discount even getting an interview as part of the learning process, and learning how to interview and be interviewed is so vital to your career.
You saw me nodding vigorously, so you knew. I would love to build on that, and it's such an important question. Thank you. A two-part, because the first part I would say is also just know what internship you're applying for. And I say this because, and I'm specifically talking about the Walrus Fellowship, which is very much a fact-checking focused fellowship. And we've tried over the years to really hone the job description to make it very clear this is a fact-checking position. And still the number of people that we interview who say, oh, I want to write features, I want to edit features. And of course, eventually we want you to be able to do that. But this role is very, very specifically focused on fact-checking. And so just kind of reading the job description closely is very, very important. And as Angela said, just get to know, I think you said critical thinking. It's such an important aspect of applying for an internship. So maybe I'm giving away an important secret here, but one of the questions that we asked during our interview is, what do you know about the Walrus? And then what do you think the Walrus could do better? And the number of people who stumble on that, I guess maybe it's not surprising, but I just would encourage people to think about that when you're applying for a publication. We want people who are critical thinkers, and I love it when someone tells me, here's what you need to be doing better. Here's where you're not thinking strategically. Here's something that I think the Walrus could do better, for instance, in terms of digital publishing. And we can definitely tell when people are just kind of grasping at something and saying, like, you could do more video. And then there are those who say, you know what, you're not reaching out to, this is something someone actually told us, you really should be reaching out to younger readers. There's like a whole demographic that's really hungry for Walrus stories, but you're not talking to them. And I thought that is such sharp insight. I really want, you're hired. And they were. So, and in terms of making it more accessible, thinking about equity and inclusion, I would love feedback on this, actually. But one thing, we've tried over the years to try to make it more accessible, the application process at least. One thing is that, now that we're all working remotely, and even before the pandemic, we were trying to make it more accessible to people who wanted to work remotely. I think not forcing people to move to Toronto for a fellowship for a one-year position is really important, because I think that opens up the candidate pool. The other thing is, we were advised by one of our former fellows that, we used to ask for 2 reference letters in the application process, and some people said, you know what, you're just asking, that's too many barriers. And so we try to make it more flexible. We're trying not to make the application process not too intimidating. So at the very least, there's no barrier to actually just trying to apply. And seeing where that leads. And as Angela said, when you apply to a position, if you get interviewed, you might not be hired for it, but people will remember you and they'll keep you in mind. And I think that's very important.
I've never been on a hiring committee before, so I can't speak to the other end of this, but I have been interviewed before for internship, and I think I completely echo what everybody said already. I just think even a small tidbit of advice for me is, it's okay to relax and to be a bit less stiff. It is definitely a professional interview. You want to look professional, you want to sound professional. But I still remember in my Globe interview, I was asked what my 10-year plan was, and I gave, something about like how I want to work in magazine journalism, everything. And then I told them I wanted to write a children's book, which was like not really part of the journalism career, super professional answer. And I remember hanging up that call being like, I don't know why I said that. But I feel like it was still just like a nice moment just to be like, we're talking, we're having a conversation. You want to see if I'm a good fit for you. I also want to see if I'm a good fit for this company. So it's a two-way street in a lot of ways.
I'll just add, at least for a company like mine, you're actually usually being interviewed by someone from HR first, and then they're sort of getting a short list. And we also give people a writing test, which is surprising that tells a lot sometimes,
Well, that's great. And you've already sort of addressed some aspects of this, but I'm interested in what you would have to say about what current students and recent graduates should be looking for when applying to internships. How do you find a relevant internship that's right for you?
I honestly devoured LinkedIn for so many weeks. I started a little sticky note tab on my computer, and eventually it became a whole Google Excel sheet where I would just kind of put the deadlines and have I applied to it? Did I get an interview or not? Which sounds like a little anal retentive, honestly, but it did help me just to be able to see all of my options in one go. And I feel like a lot of the times, what we've talked about, you have to know what you're applying for. So for instance, I never did a lot of fact checking at my student newspaper, so most likely I would not be the best suited to apply for a fellowship specifically focused on fact checking. But I also think a lot of the times, as a student journalist or even just an up-and-coming journalist, you kind of have a sense of what you want to explore in your career. I always knew that I was really interested in the digital side of media. So a lot of the times I would be really specifically focused on if there was a digital media intern position or something along those lines, because I think of internships as a way to explore what you're already interested in and to also kind of get a stepping stone to furthering that passion.
You were a great intern. Summer staffer. I'd also say, keep in mind that getting an internship or a fellowship, I like to, I mentor a lot of people, and I always say, think of it as a 3-year journey. You might not get in your first year, and that's okay. It took me 3 years to get into my first internship, and that's okay. And the reason for that is what Stephanie was saying is you start to figure out what people need, and it's a practice thing too, right? And the other thing is treat it like a reporting job. You're a journalist, so treat it like a journalist would and report it out. Figure out what people want. Figure out people's names. Start following them. I'm almost afraid to say this because I'm going to get booked up too much. But I'm part of a digital women leadership network that offers free mentorship. I love when people book 30 minutes with me and say, I'm a Canadian, I want to get into the Globe and Mail's internship program, how do I do it? And we spend 30 minutes. And you know what? I remember that person. And I recommend them for the program because they've done some research and they have figured out things. And that's what I want in a journalist. I want someone who can go figure things out and not have everything handed to them. And you can start to show that skill even before you apply somewhere.
I just wanted to build on something that Stephanie mentioned is maybe I'm focusing this too much on the Walrus Fellowship, forgive me, but I think it's, you mentioned that you didn't have fact-checking experience, so maybe a fact-checking role wouldn't be right for you. But I do think if something like that, for instance, is of interest to you, but you don't have very specific fact-checking experience, I think it's still worth applying to something that you might want to do. But being very clear about why you would want to do it and how your previous experience could help inform that role. And I just really like it when people are open about that, when they say, I haven't fact-checked before, but I've done a lot of research, and my research skills might help contribute to that. What is harder, and I don't think this is actually answering your question, but I did want to mention this, but what doesn't work for me when I'm looking for fellows, when I'm looking at candidates, is when people try to pass off experience as being relevant to the role. So I think it's really like a deep reading of what are people looking for, as Angela said, and then trying to think, well, how does your experience fit that? But trying to pass off, for instance, working, in a student newsroom, and I don't mean a student paper, but like a student course where you actually put out a publication, trying to pass that off as professional experience. I don't know. I think there's a blurred line there. But, I think just kind of being very, very honest about what your experience actually is very important, because people will see that in the interview process, in the hiring process. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I guess I'll make a pitch for, thinking widely about what that would be. I mean, certainly when I was interning at the journalism school, I only thought about being at daily newspapers. But I've had a full career in B2B media, and lots of people do. At our brand, we have Canadian Grocer, and there's interesting topics to write about that. And there's, Newcom and Annex Media. There's a number of people have full, good careers doing those things. Sometimes it's just a learning experience. We had Julia Balluz, who was an intern with the Medical Post. Blew my, just such a star right off the top. And then she won a lot of awards and is now at Vox in the US and stuff like that. So it can be a good experience no matter what, but it's also a good place to have a full career.
Great. And again, this is something that you've already touched on a little bit, but I'm interested in what you all have to say about the benefits and challenges of working remotely. And what advice would you have for somebody who maybe is, entering the industry remotely and working remotely for the first time?
We've talked a bit about this before, and you were mentioning just about having a wider candidate pool, and I think that was so crucial because when I was working at the Globe, there were some people that I never got to meet in person because they lived out in BC. And it did get me thinking that, honestly, one of the biggest constraints that anybody in the journalism industry faces is money. We cannot have enough of it. We all want a little bit more money in this industry. And I think especially when it comes to relocation, because there's not often relocation fees that are part of the internship package, it can be quite expensive to uproot your life in one place and then move to a different province. And also for people who are living with disabilities, it can be very difficult to find accessible housing. So these are a lot of very important barriers that people face. So if you have a remote option, at least, for your internship, I think it's really helpful because then they feel like they can apply. They feel like they can actually, do a really great job at this place. I will say I've done a lot of remote work because I basically really started with journalism during the pandemic. It is tough. It is really hard because I also do university classes in my bedroom, and sometimes it can honestly feel a little unmotivating and unfulfilling to close your laptop and be like, this is the end of a workday, And then I remember at one of my internships, it was fully remote, so I closed my laptop one day and I was like, this is the end of my internship. And that was a very, very strange experience. But I think when you are working remotely, the onus is kind of on you, and also hopefully on the people you work with, to reach out and ask for one-on-one time. You can have a meeting one-on-one. You could just ask them a bit more about their career, just kind of build those connections wherever you can, which can honestly be a bit difficult to do in a virtual sphere, but I think it is attainable.
Yeah, we've been doing, like everyone else, a hybrid and remote. It's funny, our summer programs, 2 summers, they were fully remote. They still are. We definitely let people work from where they are in Canada, but so many people want to come to the office because they want to make that personal connection. And so the number of people who were like, but I want to come in, can I go into one of your bureaus? And I would encourage it, because if you work in a city, or if we can at least try to pair you with someone else who lives near you, having that face-to-face connection does seem to bring, a little bit extra confidence to the person. But if you are in a situation where you are fully remote, definitely what Stephanie said, book meetings with people. Staff are very, very friendly, and they want to learn from you as much as you want to learn from them, so use that. And the worst thing they're going to say is, no, I don't have time. Okay, move on to the next person. And then my other piece of advice would be go to as many meetings as your position will allow. So if your employer says you can come to the daily news meeting and you don't really go very often because for whatever reason your job, try to carve out some time to do that, because they'll at least, even if they just see your face as a box among many boxes, it's something. And you can also learn and hear about different opportunities or different stories your outlet might be working on. And if those opportunities to participate in group meetings aren't offered, ask for them. Maybe once a week, once a month, something. Because I think what you can get from that will benefit both sides quite well. So,
Stephanie mentioned social time earlier, and when we were working fully remotely, we and still now we're working kind of like a hybrid optional model. We still try to carve out some social time on Slack or just some social meetings. And so we did, with our fellows, especially those who started remotely, we had like weekly social time where we would just for half an hour talk about anything but work. It was just like, what are you watching right now? What are you reading? And it was just nice to get to know one another as humans and to build that kind of relationship that you normally try to build organically in person. And so I think, it can be intimidating again, but I think it's also very nice when people who are new to the organization kind of chime in the social Slack channels with, the meme of the day, or especially when people are working remotely, like from another city. When someone chimes in and says, hey, it's like snowy out in Vancouver today, or whatever the case may be, it's just kind of nice. It just kind of reminds us that we are working with humans, even though we're all working remotely.
Yeah, there's obviously, some big advantages about being in the office together. I certainly, last time we were in, I mentioned we only go in once a month. But I realized last time that, a reporter was sitting behind me, and you're actually hearing someone do an interview, which I haven't heard someone else do an interview for a long time. And you just little things you realize out that, and there's an automatic process. They put down the phone, they go, huh, and you say, how'd that go, or whatever. There's a little interaction, and little things I think like that are probably quite valuable. But I mean, in some ways, the pandemic happened a perfect time for our technology, and that Slack and Zoom meetings and all that stuff. I mean, it's pretty smooth what you can do. And certainly the interns, they're in all the discussions. So, both the print discussion and the daily discussion. So they're learning little things like when I go, oh, but shouldn't this be over there? And because we just take little shots of things. So, there's a lot of advantages from being a remote worker as well in terms of how engaged you can be.
Great, thank you. And just we're getting to the end here, and I'm just interested in what you would have to say about what an intern can do to make the most of their placement experience and make sure that they're contributing to the publication. How best can an intern do that?
I found that when I was working at Broadview, it was a very specific position in terms of I knew I was helping out with the digital side of things, so I had like expectations for each day. But I also realized, when it comes to a magazine, I understood the position that I was in, where there are still a lot of gaps that I can help plug that maybe they didn't necessarily assign to me, but I could kind of take initiative and to work on. So for instance, I was scrolling through their Instagram one day and I was like, guys, we can work on our feed. We can make this like a little bit prettier. So I came to them with like a 3-pronged Instagram strategy, and I was like, what are your thoughts? Would you like me to work on this when I have some downtime on my days? And it was a project that they greenlit, and that actually allowed me to learn a lot more about social media and using that for engagement. And that's a skill that I've even been able to apply to future jobs, or to even put on my application to say like, oh, I helped grow their Instagram presence by this much, or something along those lines. So I think taking the initiative and, finding out the little ways you can help, or maybe you can jump in on a story, or maybe a source, or somebody who can help out. I think those are really great ways to at least make sure you are also remembered, which is a really important thing from internships.
Try to show off, like I think when I interned at the Ottawa Assist, I was like, what can I do that's kind of unusual? And when I was at Ryerson, I'd spent a night in a homeless shelter and wrote about that experience. So, and when I went to Ottawa Assist for my internship there, I went, okay, well, I pitched a story about what happens to bodies after they die. So I went to morgues and had people talk about it in funeral homes and did just all the stories about that. Just try to look for something that's, to show off a bit.
I'd add to that, when you do something spectacular, which you all will, send those links to the people who hired you and to other people who helped you get there so that they can see your progress. Because sometimes, at least in our newsroom, we've got 11 people who come in at the beginning of June. It gets very busy. We all go on vacation. Your hiring managers go on vacation. They might miss things that you did that were great. So you can just, hi, I'm just checking in. I wanted to show you a couple of great things I got to do. I'm having a great time, onward. And then the second thing I would say is, put your hand up for as many things as possible. So when a big story breaks and you think, you can send an email and say, hey, do you need extra hands? Now, of course, it depends what position you're in and all of that sort of thing. The other thing, my other piece of advice is, if you can, nights and weekends shifts are an amazing time to be able to show what you can do because no one else is competing with you. When I was a summer staffer at Canadian Press many years ago, I worked a lot of weekends and I got to do some amazing things like travel in the province to go. At one point, there was a glass bottom boat, some kids fell, and there were some deaths. You know, I was like, I'm working, I'll go. Or if there are overnight stories and you start really super early in the morning, you know, I would work on getting quotes and sources on things that had broken overnight. And I was really able to show off what I could do. Whereas if I had worked 9 to 5 competing against all the superstars, it may have been harder for me. And so that is another way that you can show off. And also at the Globe, like the folks who work some of our weekend digital shifts and stories break and I see alerts go out or we see different things happening, I take note of that. And I'm like, that person is sharp. They did, you know, they knew what to do and they felt confident. And so yeah, like I would just say those are some ways that you can shine. You might think those aren't the greatest shifts to take, but they actually allow you to show off.
This is an overused phrase, but bringing your whole self is kind of nice, or whatever self you are comfortable bringing to the table is also nice. So what I mean by that is just kind of don't be afraid to let your personality shine. And I think I've always appreciated it when I, as an intern, or when I've been working with interns, when I really feel like I'm getting to know them and some of their personal interests. And so sometimes during our casual chats, I remember one fellow, for instance, mentioned that they loved soccer. And then, you know, more recently I was looking for a soccer-related essay, and then I remembered that that was an interest of theirs and reached out to them and said, hey, would you like to write this? And it's, I don't just mean that in terms of productivity always, you know, bringing yourself. Sometimes it's just, again, I come back to this idea that it's nice to get to know one another as people. And I love your thought about, you know, reaching out to people who hired you or who gave you a chance and saying, hey, I got to do this. Thanks again for taking a chance on me. I just really value that ongoing relationship. And I remember all of the people who hired me as a dorky intern years ago very fondly. I'm just going to quickly make a shout out to Gilles Gagné, who passed away last year and was a publisher at Canadian Geographic and hired me, you know, after I had interned at Canadian Geographic, hired me back as new media editor at the time, and totally took a chance on me. And I would thank him over the years, and still to this day like to thank him for that. So, you know, those relationships really matter. And you know, I think that's, to me, what matters in the end.
You're just talking about your experience with Canadian Geographic, and I'm just wondering, do you have anything else to add about how an intern can increase their chances of getting hired after an internship?
I mean, I was very lucky with the timing. I just happened to, I'll say that one of the things that happened was I interned at Canadian Geographic, then went back to school. I went to journalism school to do a master's in journalism, and then happened to graduate at a time when they just happened to be looking for someone, and they said, hey, you're done school now, right? Do you want to come back? But what happened in those intervening 2 years is I stuck around and maintained that relationship. And so when they needed someone to do some freelance fact-checking for them, I said yes and did that alongside my schoolwork. For that, while I was doing some of that freelance work, I had to go into the office a couple of times. Mm-hmm. And then another editor would see me and say, hey, good to see you. And then later would say, like that just kind of reminded them that I existed. And then they'd send me a freelance gig. And so just kind of having that continued relationship with them. And I was, again, in a position where I was able to take on that work in addition to my schoolwork. It just kind of allowed me to stick around. And so when they were looking to hire someone, they remembered me. And that's how I became lucky.
Yeah, I think, there's obviously sometimes superstars and they're going to get jobs no matter what. I mean, Julia Ballouz, I mentioned before, like when Maclean's is trying to steal your intern, you've got a pretty good intern. And but for 90% of us, it depends on luck. If you're a good journalist and they suddenly realize, oh wait, we need to start hiring. They're going to start hiring interns. We hired people out of the M School intern program, and if there's not jobs, they're not going to hire you. It's just there's that.
I would say even at the moments where it feels like there aren't any jobs, there actually are quite a few jobs. Ask everyone in your networks where you should be looking, because it might not be obvious. And also, there are a lot of journalism organizations now that have mentorship programs, like CAJ has a really great one where they pair people together. Apply for things like that too. And again, you know, I'll do another plug for Digital Women Leaders. You know, there are like 300 people on that site that all have office hours that work across North America. Some of them are in the UK even. Make connections. And again, that half-hour connection can lead to other things. And when you do make a connection, and this might be obvious, but follow them on LinkedIn, you know, and if they post something, respond to it. Because again, you're just staying in their orbit, staying front of mind. I know it sounds like a really small, obvious thing, but I can count on one hand how many people actually do that with me, and I just find it funny sometimes because I would quasi-stalk people who could hire me when I was a young person. But I didn't. I was always very diplomatic. But yeah.
I also would say that there's been a lot of great groups out there in terms of like Facebook groups and Twitter groups I've been a part of that can help me find things. Canadian Journalists of Color, that was the place where I found the pitch call out for the first like big freelance piece that I landed. It was my first time writing a feature, and they took a chance on me, which was just incredible. So there's a lot of resources. I think Binders is another one that I can think of, and it's just really great because I think part of the difficult part of being a journalist is when you're on the hunt for jobs or even gigs like freelance work, it can feel so decentralized and spread across so many social media platforms and, you know, so many different websites. But if you can find just a couple of those like solid avenues you can tap, those channels you can just keep an eye on, it's a really great resource to have.
I'm going to add one more. Online News Association also has a newsletter that has a ton of jobs, and because everything is remote right now, you don't have to think just locally. You can think really globally and really good. Even if they're short, they're paid, and they're another thing on your resume to keep building on to get that other internship that you want.
Great, thank you. So that's all the questions on my list. How are we doing for time?
We can keep going a bit. We have a few questions online, but we'll leave it to the room first.
Okay. Well, we are a little late. All right. I have some other stuff that I want to say. I'm not sure.
John, I actually know that one of our questions online hits on something you have to say, so
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and throw that forward. We have a question online.
Perfect.
And John, I know you have this information. If any of our panelists have some information they'd like to add, that's awesome. Our question online is, what funding sources are available for funding interns in Canada?
That's an excellent question. I'm so glad it was asked. We've put together a list of a couple of great resources online. We've got a list of publishing internships and field placements for students looking for a place to complete your internship or co-op requirement. And because we also realize that for both large and small publications, finding the funding to offer paid internships can be challenging. So we've compiled a list of grants and subsidies for hiring students, recent graduates, and others for work-integrated learning experiences. So you can check that out on the resources tab on our website, magazineawards.com, or magazine-awards.com. Yeah, that's great.
Do you have a job that we want to put on that? How do we go through that? Contact you?
You can email staff@magazineawards.com. Yeah.
I'll add two more organizations to that people
please do.
just, because some were already said, but the Canadian Journalism Foundation has some fellowships throughout the year I would check out, and JHR also does, so.
Go ahead.
So we're just coming at it from a different standpoint as employer to employers. So my question is for the Walrus. You have a long fellowship. Are you able to retain those students for the duration of that year, or you find you're losing them to permanent full-time opportunities?
That's a good question. So yeah, the question was, are we able to retain students or fellows who join the Walrus for the entirety of that year? I think, so it used to be 6 months. It's only in the past couple of years that we expanded it to a year. And in those past couple of years, I think, if I remember correctly, just one person left their position a little bit early because they were hired somewhere permanently. But for the most part, I think people have stayed for the year. And I I think, I mean, yeah, I'm not sure why. I hope they're just having a good experience. But we do try to make sure that, especially towards the end, like the last quarter of their time with us, that we're starting to look out for things for them, and trying to connect them with people who might be able to offer them a permanent job afterwards. So we try to kind of build that in informally, so that they don't feel like they have to flee, to secure something. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, and are you using grant funding to fund those positions?
That is an excellent question. I think because we have a development arm at the Walrus, and they usually bring in the funding for the fellowships. So some of it is, what's the word? Some of it is just part of our general funding that we get, and then some of them are specific funders who want to fund a fellow. So our development arm will go out and say, do you want to fund a fellowship at the Walrus? Here's how much it is for the year. And so if you look at the Walrus masthead, you'll see, online or in print, you'll see, for instance, the Chakras Foundation Fellowship, or the Chakras Foundation Fellow, and then the name. So like there will be specific foundations or individuals who will fund one fellow each.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention too that our organization got funding for an intern. The Alberta Magazines Publishers Association, so they funded an Indigenous intern at a number of organizations, even though our organization wasn't in Alberta. So it was kind of and we found someone who was great, and we ended up hiring him. So.
Actually, that tags into my question is that we would love to hire some Indigenous interns, but A, we're having a problem reaching out and finding anybody to apply, and even if we could, we're having a discussion internally about how do we're not in any position to judge and just for us to say, yes, we accept you as Indigenous, because none of us are. But we also don't want to get into the point where people are saying yes, they're Indigenous just to get an internship, or just to get a foot in the door, which has happened in other aspects of the media. And I mean, I don't think they will at our publication because nobody cares about our publication. But we're just wondering how do you go about ensuring that you're attracting Indigenous interns, that you're putting the word out there, and that you're having some kind of self-selecting process, let's call it that.
The Walrus per time partnered with Journalists for Human Rights to fund the Indigenous Editorial Fellowship, and we found that they had done a lot of work because they had a whole media program, like they had a whole program for pairing media organizations with Indigenous journalists, and so they gave us some really, really great advice on how to structure the application process, how to make it more accessible. They also, tapped into their network to reach out to journalists and say, hey, you might be interested in applying for this. And so we found it really, really helpful to partner with an organization. I'd say even, partnering with Indigenous organizations as well would be really helpful. So I think for us, that was I think, that answered a lot of those questions.
I was just saying we did the same.
Because I must admit, I've reached out to some organizations, but we're a trade publication, we're in an industry that historically has had the Indigenous communities would have issues with. I mean, so reaching out to like a human rights organization is not going to fly for us. So, I mean, I'm getting no replies to anything.
I have a couple suggestions. So, Saskatchewan Arts Council
don't know how many HR received. They gave us about 5 to interview, so.
And then the other question I had is, was the eligibility criteria only journalism programs, or did you open that up?
No, it was definitely open. Our managing editor, because she didn't have a journalism degree, she really wanted, and she is a big believer that you don't need to have a journalism degree and you get a career that way. So she had specifically told the HR person, and the person reported to her, she wanted people who were just doing international studies at U of T or something like that. So it was a wide range. There was very, very interesting people. Again, I was the one who was like, what about journalism, like a journalism degree? And on the writing test, I did feel like sometimes, you want someone who's got an international degree and they're trying to do journalism. That's not a news story, So.
I don't have a journalism degree. It's okay. Our posting specifically says you don't need to have a journalism degree. You just need to show something that you've done. It could be your own private thing, your website, even a Twitter account, like something to just show us who you are and what you do. And in terms of the skill set, we're not always looking, not all of our positions are pure writing positions. And so we're always looking to see what kinds of skills people have, understanding that the world is expensive and you're going to have a summer job that might not be exactly the same fit. There was one memorable person who we did hire for a summer program many years ago, who had worked at a seniors home, like a long-term care home, one summer, and she just came with so many ideas that she got from the people that were in the home. And I just thought, what a clever way to sort of use your summer experience and turn it into a journalism kind of project. And so she came in with like a full sheet of ideas, and it was great.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to follow that up. So you had mentioned that some years you've received about 500 applicants for about 11 positions, and that you have a fairly rigorous selection process that takes a long time. Is that because you're sort of weeding through a lot of people that, you're having to like narrow that down through that process?
It's because we believe that part of what we can bring to the industry is also the interview process. And so we probably over-interview by a factor of 5 for our programs, but you don't know what you don't know. And so we will take a lot of chances on interviews on applications that don't look traditional so that we can potentially find people. And so, and that interview process, I will say, I was actually just talking about this morning with some colleagues. It also benefits the newsroom because there's a lot of staff who want to eventually get into management, and being a manager is knowing how to hire. Well, the summer program and filtering through resumes and interviewing young people is a way for our own staff to get some development opportunities in how to interview. So it kind of works both ways.
Okay.
We have a few questions online, so I'll go through those real quick. So one of them we already have touched on a bit, but I'll just give a chance for anybody to add anything else. Are there any internships focused on creating spaces for Indigenous people interested in media and journalism?
So specifically just for Indigenous, so again, I don't know if we're offering it again soon, but we did have an Indigenous editorial fellowship at the Walrus, and keep an eye on the Walrus Careers page to see if that is available to you. I think please correct me, does the Meta Journalism Local Journalism Initiative, I think there are specific like positions for Indigenous journalists, is that?
The Canadian Journalism Foundation has a specific fellowship, and so does JHR.
Great.
Okay, our next question is, what are strategies for offering constructive feedback for interns?
As a former intern, I like the sandwich method, like with the compliment, then the criticism, and then the compliment after. That can be kind of helpful. Maybe it's just my ego speaking, but it's nice to know, like most likely you are doing good work, but there is like this point where you can actionably improve on. and it helps you to actually be aware of that.
Perfect. Okay, and I'll go ahead and cut it off with one last question. How can interns advocate for themselves, set professional and personal boundaries in work situations, especially during conflict and issues with power dynamics?
You know, it's tricky, obviously. You're in a workplace where you're trying to get a job, and, you know, I don't know what situations people are in sometimes, but, you know, back in the 90s, you know, people were, they were gruff with you, and you know, the city editor, I was doing something and they didn't, why are you not doing that story? But people were gruff, and you can easily get sensitive about that. I tried to be a bit tough, and you try to be, it's part of the learning process, but it's obviously a challenge, and everyone has to figure out their own situation.
Yeah, I'd add to that, you know, I think part of why the Globe and Mail has, you know, we've got one manager in charge of different programs, plus we pair people up with a mentor, plus they have their own boss. Our hope is that there are enough people that you could go to resolve things or to get advice on things.
Yeah, I was trying to talk about this maybe inarticulately earlier when I said, you know, setting expectations is really important. Yeah, I've struggled with that a lot in my mind, especially in journalism. There's this sense of, you know, you're the new reporter or the new intern, you know, deal with it. If you can't take the workload, if you can't take it here, then maybe you're not meant to work in journalism. And I strongly disagree with that. I don't think you need to have a toxic workplace or survive a toxic workplace in order to succeed. And so I think it's very much on, you know, on newsrooms to be supportive of interns and fellows and the people who are kind of new to the newsroom and paying attention. I think especially during the pandemic, the issue of burnout really surfaced, and a lot of people talked about that. Yeah, I really have struggled with that in the past because it's hard for someone who maybe is experiencing burnout to talk about it openly. And so I think it's on us, and I think what you said is really important, is for interns to have more than one person to talk to, because maybe their direct manager is the problem. And maybe they feel that they need to talk to someone else. And so I think, you know, having more than one person that you can turn to and someone that you can trust is really important, in kind of being able to figure out, you know, there might be times when you're not sure, should I be setting boundaries here? Is this normal for me to be, you know, doing this much work? Or, you know, I'm feeling very stressed, but I don't know who to turn to. I think it's good to be able to turn to someone and just kind of confide in them and get good advice. And I hope that newsrooms are doing more and more to support interns in that way.
Great. Thank you, everyone. I think that's it. We're out of time now. Okay, great. So that's it for me. Thank you to everyone for coming and participating in this. I hope that it was interesting for everybody. And yeah, that's about all I've got. Thank you, everyone.
why I can't handle another dance. The way your body moves me, alright. I max out all my bank accounts. Keep doing what you do. I'm so intoxicated by your love and the way you got me waiting. Let me tell you something, keep me contemplating. From my hold on, so intoxicated. I'm so intoxicated. I'm so intoxicated by your love and the way you got me waiting. Let me tell you something, keep me contemplating. From my hold on, so intoxicated. I'm 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 so intoxicated.
Thank you for your patience and thank you for joining us here today. It's so great to see all of you here today and to have the folks joining us on Zoom. That's awesome. So, my name's Kristen Lonergan. I'm the Manager of Programs and Special Projects here at the National Media Awards Foundation. Now, before we begin, I'd just like to say once again that this session is being recorded for the folks who can't join us here today in person. This year, the foundation leveraged its charitable status to offer 50 all-access LinkedIn Learning licenses to Ontario-based freelancers and publications. These licenses typically cost $350 each. However,
Thanks to funding from Ontario Creates and our partnership with LinkedIn Learning, the Foundation is pleased to offer these licenses for free. A LinkedIn Learning license provides access to over 16,000 educational, expert-led videos, including a selection of resources hand-picked by the NMAF team and tailored to professionals in the Canadian publishing industry. Publications are able to share their license with their entire team simply by providing us a general staff email address to use for your LinkedIn Learning account. Many of you have already signed up to receive a free license, or maybe you're interested in receiving one. If you'd like to access this incredible resource, please come see me after the session, or you can send us an email at staff@magazine-awards.com, just letting us know that you'd like one, and I can set you up. Our information is also all available on our website. With a library of over 16,000 resources available to you, you might be wondering where to start in order to make the most of your free license. Please welcome Josh Keller from LinkedIn Learning, who's here to share his top tips and tricks for you and your team to use your license to its fullest potential.
Thanks so much, Kristen, and happy to be here. Hope you all can hear me and potentially see my screen. So as Kristen mentioned, and hopefully you can see my screen, LinkedIn Learning is an intelligent skill building platform that leverages personalized content, community-based learning to drive skill-driven outcomes for all of our learners. It empowers you to develop the right skills and grow personally and professionally. LinkedIn's learning is powered by our best-in-class skills taxonomy, which fuels our platform to provide you all, our learners, a better experience. So as Kristen mentioned, comprehensively, LinkedIn has over 800 million members with 14 million profile postings, everyone who has identified over 38,000 unique skills across 18 languages, and people are constantly updating what skills they have and what they're hoping to accomplish. And we utilize that to understand how can we best provide resources and trainings to help you kind of improve both personally and professionally. So this, for you, turns into a hyper-relevant learner experience. LinkedIn Learning offers a robust content library of over 17,000 high-quality courses, all taught by today's leading industry experts across a number of different fields. These expertly are taught to drive learner engagement and impact industry experts and thought leaders with real-world experience. LinkedIn vets every instructor to ensure that they have credible real-world experience in the subjects that they'll be teaching, which has led to over 2,600 experts and thought leaders recruited from around the world, engaging instruction that drives immediate application. So we want to make sure that this isn't something that is kind of a compliment, but can really help you improve today. And because our impact and our work is data-driven, we are able to release over 50 new courses each week that's driven by our LinkedIn data from our 750 plus members, and really informed on what the world is needing and seeing in terms of skills to kind of further us as professionals. So agile content production allows us to quickly publish content on in-demand skills. And what does that mean for you? The depth of coverage for in-demand skills to meet relevant and timely needs. So no matter what your role is within the industry, you can find something that can help you today, tomorrow, or personally. Thinking about skills in leadership and management, software development, IT, digital transformation, or the modern workforce. So a number of different options and buckets that you can learn from, really covering business skills, function-specific skills, and technology skills, making sure that you have the skills today and tomorrow to succeed. This flexible content is able to make things a lot easier for you. So our videos are bite-sized and short for quick learning. Curated learning paths are done by LinkedIn for specific topics such as managing or difficult conversations, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and also as shared, the foundation has also set up learning paths that are custom to you all and your needs. So different content formats like audio only content and live instructor events cater to different learning styles. I personally like to use them as my kind of podcast as I take the train in every morning. So able to really do that, and interactive exercise files for application-based training for those kind of more specific skills. And then for folks who are looking to kind of dive a little deeper into real world application, some of our learnings have quizzes to reinforce what you're learning throughout the experience. A number have in-depth skill application. And then we have a number of exercise files for some of the hard skills if you're looking to expand outside of just the traditional form to understand how to best be practicing those as well. Then another incredible resource that we have is 100+ certification prep programs to help learners effectively prepare for certification exams in a number of different spaces. And then number of continuing education partners to help learners maintain their certification. So really exciting pieces here to help you kind of gain skills to make you more attractive and a better professional. And then learners can easily find the content they need across all available learning resources. So you'll see our platform resources, any resources that are uploaded by the awards, and able to quickly search those. And I will kind of walk in there and show some of my favorite tips and tricks, but understanding different types. So you can look at audio, you can look at documents, you can look at certifications, pick the kind of level, if you're a beginner, if you're intermediate, if you're advanced, and really understand from there how to best pick the courses for you. Also, you can watch socially, so you can see who else within the organization has watched a course or is currently watching a course, so you can see that, see who else on LinkedIn has your connections, build rapport over that, and also join learning groups. So if there's specific skills that you want to continue to learn or interact with others who are gaining those skills, you can do that as well. So adding more social features, and then also question and answers and learners. So you can engage directly with our content creators and industry experts, asking questions along, and can play along in that realm as well. So that's really high level. And then what I wanted to do is kind of walk through what it looks like on the platform for those who have it as a friendly reminder, and then for those who are interested, just kind of what it looks like. So to access it you can do it from your LinkedIn homepage. You would click here and head into LinkedIn Learning. Now, when you get this is my account, so it's going to look a little different and customized to me, but you'll see here anything that the organization is highlighting in terms of key content or key initiatives. You can always see what you're in progress of learning. So I've been looking a little bit at how to be better at a LinkedIn Learning admin. If there's anything assigned by your organization or content that they feel is relevant, you'll see that here. Then one of the unique things that I recommend for everyone to do really when you get started is to make the algorithm work for you. So when you get in here, you can determine whether you want to grow and advance in your current role, which I hope you all are, or if you are looking for something different within the field, you can say you want to transition into a different role. So this will help kind of curate that based on those information. It'll help you advance in your role. So LinkedIn will kind of think about what are videos that might help me in this space and promote those to you. Top picks, just like your favorite streaming platform on the video side, right? The more you watch, the more we can understand what might be important to you. That'll start getting feeded to your algorithm. See what your community is learning this week. So people who else, the other people who have these licenses or people in your network, what are they thinking about? What are they watching? And then you can also set skills that you can follow. So for me, time management, I'm a new father, so I'm balancing work and parenting. So that's really big for me. And in my role, wanting to be really effective at communicating with customers, supporting them. So I have some information there. And then you can always see featured instructors on the platform, top courses that not just are being watched by people in your network, but across our 850 million members. And then if you want to pop in and do a different way, you can join live office hours with our experts. So being in a little bit more of a kind of a live setting, and then just more skills related to your recent searches. So the more you use it is what I would say, the better it gets at kind of promoting content that we think is really valuable to you. You can also see the courses that you've watched, recommend them to others. You can share them on LinkedIn so people can understand that. And then when you finish them, you can add a certificate to your LinkedIn profile, share that you've watched that, and kind of continue to build your kind of Rolodex of skills. So high level, that's what it looks like. I always tell people, go to My Learning. This will kind of be an overview of what you've watched. So in progress, if you're running short on time, but you're like, you know what, I want to talk about the skills and the courses that I want to watch in the coming weeks, you can save them so that you can come back here. You can always see your learning history. And then I always recommend folks to go to their My Goals tab. So this is a good way to let LinkedIn help you. So you can remember we talked about earlier, set your career goals. You can also set, and you see I'm a little bit of a delinquent this week, but you can set your own personal goal, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, and LinkedIn will kind of give you updates, give you friendly bumps to make sure that you are leveraging that and working towards your goals. And this is also an area where you can think about different pieces within your career. This one won't be as relevant, but also you can manage the skills you follow. So on my homepage, you saw time management and CRM were things that were getting pushed to me. I can manage it here. I could look at journalism. I could look at editorial process, different pieces like that. I save that. It'll start coming into My Learning feed. So that's kind of the way that we're pushing content to you, trying to make sure that the relevant content that you might be interested is getting there, but also the ability to browse. So I like to kind of click here. You can see we bucket them by business, creative, technology. So you can always kind of look here, find different pieces, and then the search is really powerful. So I also am kind of interested in, as the new year comes around, thinking about how am I going to, not just at work, but at home, think about budgeting. So for me, personal finance is something that's top of mind. So I would just type in personal finance. I hate typing while people are watching. And then you can see here, we have over 1,000 results for personal finance. So how do I dwindle that down? I'm going to go to the all filters. I'm going to go with courses and learning paths. Those are things that it's not just one little short video, but more kind of curated content that you can watch in a path. So popular is managing your personal finance. I'm going to click into here, pause it so you all don't hear it, but see just the different videos to see what I can watch, potentially save. This looks like something that I might want to do later. So I'm going to save it. Also kind of can look here, read a little bit about the course details, see how many learners, anyone I know. No, that's okay. And then maybe I watched this video and I love the work that Jane did, and she was a tremendous teacher. So I'm going to follow her on LinkedIn. I'm also going to look at the other courses that she has so that maybe if this worked for me, I'm going to add more of hers and just continue to save it so that when I come back, I don't have to kind of go through everything. I can look at my saved courses and kind of go from there. So really high level, those are the things that I tell folks to really think about. A, we're adding new skills every day. B, the more that you kind of use it, the more it learns and can push to you. But also, this is supposed to help you personally and professionally. So whatever is top of mind for you today, we probably have a video and a number of people who you can connect with who are using and leveraging this platform in this way. So that's really everything that I wanted to cover. I'm happy to open it up for any questions or comments or kind of tips or tricks. Maybe a little louder.
I'll go up to the microphone.
Sure.
So I know we've had a number of publications with multiple team members accessing the platform join up recently, taking advantage of the free LinkedIn Learning license. I'm wondering if you have any tips for really making the most out of having a LinkedIn Learning license for a team and really kind of exploring what courses might be good for your team and what's the best way to kind of assign that to your team or deliver it or encourage them to really take advantage of those different professional courses.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I would say what I would do is, again, going back to, let's say Outlook is a new thing that is being used at your organization. What you can do here, again, you can click save, you can click share. So whether it's a link, share this course, copy this, drop it in your chat, if you're using Teams, we integrate really well, shockingly, with Teams. So you can do it there. You can send it as an email. just saying, hey, I found this, I found it really helpful. Here's a way that you can kind of share it. So I think saving, and then it'll always be in the My Learning. But if you want to push it out to others, just different links, email, and if you're connected on LinkedIn, you can always just kind of share it with individuals too. So typing a name in here, if I wanted to share it with Tim, I could do that.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today to hear about LinkedIn Learning. Again, we do have a few licenses available for Ontario-based freelancers and publications. If you'd like to access this resource, you can come see me afterwards, or you can email us at staff@magazine-awards.com. This information is also all available on our website, and we have a bit more information on our website under resources about the master classes that we offer through LinkedIn Learning, which are an absolutely phenomenal resource for really any publication. So right now, if you are registered for a fast pitch session with an editor, you should have received an email that we have moved it online. If you need a bit of space here to do it, if you'd like to do it here, just come see me and I'll make sure to help get you set up. Otherwise, if you're joining us for our celebration of excellence tonight, then we will see you at 7. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here today.
Life was full and fruitful and you could take a real bite. The juice pouring well over your skin's delight. The shadow it grows and takes the depth away, leaving broken down pieces to this priceless ballet. The shallower it grows, the shallower it grows, the fainter we go into the fade out line.